know it's been a week since our last episode, but I had to make a decision. I have to say, I am done with Star Trek Discovery. The line must be drawn in here, no further. From this point on, I'm only going to talk about old episodes. TNG, the original series, Deep Space Nine, Voyager, maybe Enterprise. But this is where I draw the line. The line in the sand is drawn from here on out. No more Discovery.
Captain, sir?
Yes, Tom.
We have orders from Admiral Andre. We must review the next episode of Star Trek Discovery. The people have spoken.
Andre! 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 Andre!
Captain, incoming message.
Intruder alert on deck 8. Enter authorization code. Command functions are offline. Automatic defense procedures initiated. Diagnostic complete. Sensors are functioning normally.
Welcome to episode 2 of Captain Robb's Trek Logs. I am, of course, your host, Captain Robb. With us, as always, is Lieutenant Tom Connors. How you doing, Lieutenant?
I'm doing the best I can, sir.
And once again, beaming in via subspace from Starfleet Command is Fleet Admiral Andre. How you doing, Mr. Fleet Admiral?
Excellent, thank you. Greetings, everyone.
Yes. I'd like to thank everyone for making the first episode, the pilot episode, the Sulu episodes, if you will, a success. But unfortunately, you people don't realize what kind of pressure this puts on me. And I don't deal well with pressure! So, anyway, we're going to be dealing with that more. We're going to bring in Counselor Troy. She's going to give me some therapy, hopefully some good beta ZT, and we're going to get me evened out as the weeks go by.
And if all else fails, there's Romulan ale.
Yes, Romulan ale. But we're not going to get into the Saurian brandy. So anyway, we have a recap of episode 5 of Discovery, Choose Your Own Pain.
It's aptly titled, is it not?
Yes, it is. So, in episode 5 of Choose Your Own Pain, they discover that their jumps are putting a huge strain on the tardigrade, and then it goes into a fetal position.
Just like Robb.
Just like Robb, yes. And they have to figure out how to solve the problem. Captain Lorca gets captured by the Klingons, another red shirt dies, and he gets taken prisoner, and we see a familiar character from Star Trek's past. Tom, who's that character?
Mr. Mudd.
Mr. Harcourt Fenton Mudd himself, played by Rainn Wilson. And he is sharing a cell, actually, with Captain Lorca and another Starfleet officer. And we run into a new character, Lieutenant Ash Tyler, who we've never seen before. The Klingons tell him, choose your pain, and that's how they keep them from bonding. There's an escape. The tardigrade is still in the fetal position. They come up with a plan to inject DNA into Stamets. There's a revealed romance. And Michael Burnham ejects the tardigrade out through the airlock with a bunch of pixie dust. And that brings an end to the episode. So, let's talk about what we did like. First of all, Tom, what did you, in fact, like about this episode?
It wasn't as bad as the other ones. Actually, no, I kind of did like most of the stuff in the prison with Mudd and Lorca and Tyler, who we'll talk more about later. I kind of like that stuff. The rest of the episode I could do without. It just was boring for the most part. I mean, it wasn't as anger-inducing as the last few episodes, so I'll give it that much. I guess maybe I'm numb at this point, to where it's just like I really could give a shit where it was going, and maybe just that little bit with Lorca and Mudd and Tyler and everything like that, maybe that whole thing kind of, you know, it was kind of impressive just because of how shitty it's been to this point. It wasn't a very successful episode outside of that, I guess is the best way to sum it up.
Yeah, Andre, what did you like about this episode?
The Klingon captain lady, the one in charge of the prison ship, the one who used the guy as a lover, when he blew half her face off at the end. She's going to be so angry about that for later episodes. So I guess I like that. Yeah, I think.
You're really reaching there, Andre. You know that.
Yeah, I know, but this is the segment, what did we like? So you have to try to come up with something.
Here's what I like about it. I like that it was consistent. This episode, again, was 45 minutes long. It was consistent, at least in that aspect.
Okay, be fair, Rob, because you did tell me before that you didn't think Rainn Wilson did a bad job as Mudd.
No. I did like Rainn Wilson as Harry Harcourt Fenton Mudd. I did like him. Honestly, though, he's no Roger C. Carl, though. I mean, the guy, Roger C. Carl defined the role. Rainn Wilson was pretty good, but he just lacked a lot of charisma, like I said, that Roger C. Carl had brought to the role. But it is nice to see a familiar character like that, and one that they didn't completely fuck up.
I will say something about this Mudd, though, or the original Mudd. The thing with him is that you see that he's a villain who has done some crimes, but not the worst of crimes. Like, he's like a relatively light criminal in the bigger scheme of things, which is why, like, they kind of go easy on him. He does some shifty stuff, but all in all, he's kind of like this charismatic, fairly likable guy.
Kind of like David Nevin in Pink Panther.
He's a small-time grifter, really. I mean, that's what it is.
Exactly. Yeah, good comparison. Whereas this guy, to me, he comes across as more like you don't really know where you got him. Like, he comes across as someone who can potentially stand over you with a torture device. Because now he wants revenge over some slight. This guy seems like he's capable of anything. Like, yeah, he can be someone completely harmless, but suddenly the page might turn and you see a completely different side, like the stone-cold killer psychopath. Like, there's something unsettling about this incarnation of Mudd. Like, that guy is going to want revenge. And I don't think it's a good idea to be on that guy's shit list, to be honest.
This version of Mudd does seem more ruthless, yeah.
I think this harkens to a whole mirror universe thing, and all we're missing is the mustaches.
I will say that it's a very good, dark and gritty reboot of Harry Mudd.
Yes, and that's actually one of the problems I have with this whole thing.
But unfortunately, nobody asked for it, yeah.
That is true.
Yeah. Okay, so we've covered what we liked, briefly, albeit very briefly. What didn't we like about this episode? We'll start with Tom. What didn't you like?
All the tardigrade shit just got really convoluted from the beginning, and then just it's continuing here, so that part really just threw me off when it came to the show. Like I said, the prison stuff was okay, and that kind of drew me in, the whole thing with the Klingon, female prison guard, whatever. But like I said, everything else in the show just fell flat, and it was just more of the same. You had more of Michael Burnham trying to act like she's a know-it-all. You had all the other characters acting completely like they had before. You had this whole little thing with the relationship and them kind of doing this power play thing. And to me, it just came off as dumb. I mean, I'm sure you guys will probably have a lot more to say about it than I really do. It just felt to me like it was more of the same bullshit of, like Rob's favorite saying, to where Michael Burnham likes to think she's the smartest motherfucker in the room, and we had more of that here. This whole episode was a lot of that, at least in my eyes, other than the prison stuff with Lorca, so...
Andre, what didn't you like about this episode in particular?
Well, I'm just going to continue from what I said in last week's episode about the characters and how weak they are, because they're not really characters. They're just cardboard cutouts that do whatever the scene requires them to do. And they are very internally inconsistent from one scene to the next, and suddenly will do something that is completely out of character with what has kind of been established up until then. So, I have one question for the writers of Star Trek Discovery. Why is everyone so stupid? That is my biggest issue with this episode. Everyone we see on screen is so stupid. There is no way any of these people would have been involved in Starfleet or would have been accepted into the Next Generation era Starfleet or even original series era Starfleet, which this kind of is. Let me bring up some examples. Let's begin with the Klingons, because they have like this idea that one of the prisoners are going to select someone else to prevent them from bonding. You serious? That's the perfect way to make them bond. Because no matter if you have 2-3 prisoners and they have to point at each other, it's just going to be a matter of time before they kind of figure out that that guy, he has to choose. And the real enemy are those people there, the ones who are making him choose and who are actually beating me up. And I'm going to feel closer to him for that reason. And if you have like more than 2, it's just going to be a matter of time before they're going to start sharing the beatings. So yeah, no, that's not how you prevent people from bonding. That's a perfect way to make them bond, because you give them a very common enemy. You don't want them to bond? then split them apart. But again, I think that whole thing is just a ruse, which we're going to get back to later anyway. But then you also have back on Discovery, like for instance how Saru, who generally is a smart guy, he should be able to look at that tardigrade and see that, yeah, it's pretty much falling apart. You can tell with your naked eye. And if you really take him into this enemy territory, then he's probably going to die right there and leave you stranded. Then what are you going to do? But still, they keep on pushing forward. And Lorca, well, he just instantly jumps and accepts this Lieutenant Tyler without seemingly thinking at all this might be a trick of some kind, which we'll get back to later. And how do they work so well together? Have they worked together before? No, they see each other for the first time, yet they're in complete and total sync that this is a two-man job. In fact, the only characters that I kind of liked in this episode was the Doctor and Stamets. Like, those two and their relationship. That, I think, was perfectly fine. But other than that, like, all the characters, even Saru, who I will give credit for, at least he tried. He tried to, like, do something to make sure that his captaincy would be as good as possible. When he asked the computer to, like, find the characteristics of all the greatest Starfleet captains. And then learn from those. But then, with the analysis, then why didn't he get that analysis? Then he said, yeah, I know what I did. What, are you afraid of learning? Are you afraid of getting criticized? That was awfully chicken shit of you to, like, just bail out on that in the last moment.
Well, and I've heard so many people say that this show feels like it was written by people who've never really seen Star Trek before, but just kind of have an idea of what it is, and they've seen like 1 or 2 episodes a long time ago, and now they're just trying to imitate that.
Well, this is the case, isn't it?
Yeah, like I said, Alex Kurtzman, he actually said he had a lot of problems with the original Star Trek, and he made changes because he wanted his ideas. And especially in that first movie, things like the ships being built on Earth rather than in space. Why are there no windows on the bridge? I'm like, because it's a spaceship, dummy. That's why there's no windows.
Yeah, it's called structural weakness.
Right, I was just going to say it's one of the last places you want to have something like that, yeah.
Exactly. But I digress. There's a big problem I had with the scenes where Lorca was in the Klingon prison with Harry Mudd. Not so much with Harry Mudd, except like Harry Mudd comes more ruthless, and I didn't like that. But we revealed something about Lorca's character. Not only is Captain Lorca a prick, he's also a sociopath. There was the incident where Mudd said something about Lorca's past. He was the captain of the Buran, and there was a battle with the Klingons, and Lorca destroyed his own ship, killing his own crew. I don't know about you guys, but that really irritated me. The fact that he not only he was the first guy off the ship, but that he murdered an entire crew to save them. What is this guy doing commanding a starship? If he's that callous, if he's that uncaring, okay, you've both seen the Doomsday Machine, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The original series episode, The Doomsday Machine, Commodore Decker, he was catatonic after losing his crew, and it was his fault. He was emotionally devastated. This guy just kills his own crew without a second thought. Oh, I had to save them. No, you saved them by making sure they could get away. If you can get away, they can get away.
I'm gonna say, one thing we've learned from Captain Kirk is there's always a third option.
And I have to say one thing, though, because Lorca is a very anti-Roddenberry captain, which, of course, is... Well, they probably never even considered that, because the writers of Discovery obviously aren't even aware. But when Gene Roddenberry originally conceived of Star Trek, then he imagined the captain, this would be Captain Pike, to be like Horatio Hornblower in space, meaning basically that he is someone who is constantly worried about the responsibility for his crew and their well-being, and how this weighs down on him and is such a burden. And the actor originally playing Christopher Pike, Jeffrey Hunter, he went completely overboard with that, and he was just like this chronically depressed captain, more or less. Whereas then Captain Kirk came in, and he was the complete opposite, and that was right. But you still see several scenes of that, with how like the pressure is getting to him. And then you have this guy who just like, I'm just going to save you all, so I'm just going to kill you all, instead of letting you fend for yourself and giving you a fighting chance. So I said in the last episode that I kind of like see what they're doing with Lorca and how you're supposed to not like him, but still, I see him as someone that you kind of want on your side in a war. But again, this just goes back to what I said about there not being any real characters. They just act how the writers need them to act from scene to scene, so that we can establish that Lorca is an evil, evil man. And Burnham is just going to have to step up and relieve him of command at some point.
Yeah, that's obviously what they're setting it up to. But like I said, it just really irritated me because we have so many examples from previous episodes of Star Trek that captains making bad decisions face some kind of consequence. And even there was an episode of the original series, Court Martial, where they thought Kirk had accidentally killed crewman Ben Finney, was a longtime friend of his, and he had to face an official inquiry. And it just seems like it just smacks of, it's like turning the Star Trek universe upside down, really. And they tried to set it up in the beginning where they were questioning the admiral was questioning Lorca's authority. Oh, well, you had Michael Burnham come on the ship. He goes, well, yeah, you gave me free reign to take whoever I want, Starfleet regulations. But still, at the same time, killing your entire crew. This is like a Jim Jones kind of thing. For you kids, for you younger kids, you don't get that reference. You kill them to save them. I mean, there are some serious mental deficiencies going on here, and
God complexes don't even start to describe it.
Exactly. But other than that, like I said, it suffers from the typical problems that we've discussed before. I found this episode more cringeworthy than anything, and the gratuitous use of the F word, really. Yeah, I know people are making a big deal about that, but...
Well, double dumbass on them. Well, here's my problem with it, and I brought this up to Rob. For us to be able to believe that guys like Kirk and all them, just a few years down the road, or who are actually alive in this time period right now, but up to a few years down the road, don't even really know how to curse because it's been so out of the zeitgeist of our, communication for so long... For me to believe that someone like her, as timid as she is as a character especially, to just fluently let that word drop like that just felt completely out of the universe. I have no issues with swearing, don't get me wrong, but A, it was the wrong character. B, it's really difficult to believe in something like double dumbass on you just like 30 years down the road.
Yes, I mean, there was that one scene, that great scene with Spock. Captain, I've noticed the use of colorful metaphors. And so... Like I said, it's just hard to. It just seems to me it's like the writers trying to be edgy. Oh, we have to find an excuse to use the F word. So let me just write it in here, and so they're just trying deliberately to be edgy. It's kind of like that uncle who tries too hard to be cool. We're gonna get to a couple things, but at the end part, revealing the big reveal about the couple, who's a couple. Could they find actors with a little bit more chemistry? Can you find actors who at least seemingly pretend to like each other? I really didn't get a vibe that they cared about each other all that much.
It felt very forced, yes.
Yeah. I know on duty you have to act one way, but and in personal life you have to act another. But it just didn't seem like these people had been together. It seems like okay, pretend you're a couple, go. And it felt very forced.
It seemed irrelevant to the story that they were actually a couple, except for one scene and one scene only, and that's where Wilson Cruz's character, Dr. Culber, I think it is.
Dr. Culber, yeah.
Yeah, comes in, and when they come in to explain to Anthony Rapp's character about how it's taken a toll on the tardigrade, that's the only time it really seems like it's important and relevant to the scene that they're actually in a relationship, because you can tell there's a power struggle there. Outside of that, it's just kind of thrown in. You know what I mean? It just seemed more blatant than anything, and it didn't really bug me per se. It just, like you said, there was no real chemistry there. It felt real forced, not like totally like ham-fisted forced like a lot of other shit in this show so far. So I'll give it that much, but it did feel like is this necessary kind of thing, I guess, more than anything?
To me, I got the impression that, like, just based on the acting and the chemistry between them that came across on screen, that they must be a relatively new couple, still in that initial crush phase, and establishing borders and establishing the routine of the relationship, which is a new thing on them both. That's the impression that I got. If that is not the case, if these have been together for a long time, well, then I'm sorry, they didn't manage to get that across on screen. But yeah, it was like cute for someone that is in a recent relationship and still in the crush phase.
That's what we thought didn't work.
And 2 days later.
And 2 days later. But there actually is something out of this episode that has been making the rounds on the internet. There's a conspiracy theory of sorts. Andre, why don't you take us through this conspiracy theory and what the interwebs have to say about it?
Yes, the fans have this theory, which is not a stretch at all, because in the previous episode we saw this albino Klingon, Vok. He went with the matriarchs of this clan of scum and villainy who would help him and give him abilities that he didn't have before, but there would be a price to pay, a heavy price. And so there are some that are of the opinion that Lieutenant Ash Tyler that we saw in this episode is actually Vok post-surgery. Now, we would have seen this before. This would be the same as on Dawn in the original series episode, The Trouble with Tribbles, where you may recall that he was a human, or at least he appeared to be a human, which turned out to be a surgically altered Klingon. And that was kind of the whole purpose of the Tribbles. It was for that one reveal, that Tribbles don't like Klingons. And how much are you willing to bet that in later episodes Captain Lorca's Tribble is going to respond to Ash Tyler?
It just seems kind of really heavy-handed at this point.
I don't think the problem lies in the story. The story actually, okay, I get where exactly the way Andre explained it. I get exactly where they're going with it if that's the case. The problem is it's very tough for anybody to sit there and swallow and give the writers the
benefit of the doubt.
The benefit of the doubt that this is how they wanted to do this, because, yeah, you can really believe that at one point somebody said Gene Roddenberry and another writer piped up, who did she play? That's how knowledgeable this crew probably is, and it's just difficult to give them that much credit, I guess, is what I'm trying to say.
I can totally see, like, in the writer's room, somebody coming in at like 8 or 9 in the morning. Hey, guys, I actually saw this old episode of the old Star Trek, and, you know, this Klingon was disguised as a human. What if we do that, man? That would be so cool. Like, you know, like, they're discovering it for the first time and then trying to co-opt it. I really could see something like that happen. Oh, do you think anybody would notice? Nah, man, nobody's seen this. This is, like, all old and stuff. You know, and they're like get so excited that they're totally don't realize that they're telegraphing this.
That or they think they're clever by tying into it, one or the other.
Yeah, I don't want to believe that they can actually be clever and work in a really good plot twist, but the way they're doing this makes me think that, nah, you know, you guys are pretty much giving away the whole game here.
The audience is smarter than they are.
Yeah.
By figuring this out already.
Well, we don't know if this is accurate. Like, it could be that Ash Tyler is just a human and he is just a Starfleet officer who really was captive there.
Right.
But it seems awfully practical, though. It seems really practical. But if that is the case, if he really is a Klingon in disguise, whether that be Vok or someone else, then again, it just goes back right into what I said about the writers. They just like do one scene at the time, and all the personalities and everything, it just fits that one scene. Because if the guy is a Klingon, then how was he able to work so well with the captain, with like how they fight and like how in sync and coordinated they were? Because then that has to be like some kind of standard Starfleet training. And yeah, I don't see it as impossible that Vok can look like a human, but that he would be able to learn Starfleet terminology and everything like that in how short a time span has there been between the previous episode and this one? Days? Weeks?
That's exactly what I was going to bring up, and thank you for stealing my thunder on it. No, I'm just kidding.
Oh, you're welcome.
No, I was going to bring that point up because that's what sat wrong with me when I heard this theory. It was like, yeah, but if that's the case, that was a quick transformation. And not only that, he learned how to speak fluent English. You know, he got that shit out of his mouth. So, and you know, and and just the going through the physical transformation, I'm like, okay, it would be easy to hide, you know, an operation, so to speak, you know, a very huge alteration to change him from to looking like a Klingon to looking like a human being by him being beaten up constantly. That would make sense. But like you said, there's just not enough time, it seems like, between the last episode and this one where things were set up and things are executed for us to go like, well, this is something that should have happened in that 6-month interim that we got.
Well, okay, actually, you know, the thing that supports this theory is, and according to the Daily Dot, there is a false casting, it seems, in Star Trek Discovery. There's an actor named Javid Iqbal, whose IMDb page contains only one credit, and that's Star Trek Discovery. He only has one photo in full Klingon makeup as Vok. And then there's Ash Tyler, who's played by Shazad Latif.
Right, which is conspicuous because he was cast as a Klingon originally, not the albino Klingon, but still.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the thinking is that this is I wouldn't call it a false flag, but this is a
red herring, yeah.
Red herring, yeah, throw everybody off the trail. And like I said, I don't want to give him that much credit, because as bad as this show has been, I don't want to believe for 1 second that they could come up with something this clever.
Well, they probably did, but like Andre and I believe is they fucked it up because they've already done, if this is supposed to be that character, they did it overnight.
But I have to give this to them, though, that if this really is the case, if the reality of the matter is that the actor playing Ash Tyler is really the actor playing Vok, and Javid Iqbal, who is credited as playing Vok, is just a red herring, someone made up, or a stunt double for one scene or something, then that is really clever. And kudos to them for doing that, for trying to keep the secret. So if that is the case, then my congratulations. Well done. Just too bad about everything else in the series.
Well, speaking about too bad about everything else in this series, we had a reveal, actually. It was revealed that Wilson Cruz's character, Dr. Culber, and Anthony Rapp's character, Stamets, are actually a couple.
Which we touched on a little bit already, yeah.
We touched on a little bit on that, but,
where was the phrasing there, Rob?
Phrasing. Damn it. But anyway, they're not the first same-sex couple actually on television this season. That credit belongs to Bortus and Clyden on the Orville. So guys, what are your thoughts on the way these two series handled these reveals? We'll start with Andre.
Orville all the way. That was so much better. The reason I really liked the relationship between Bortus and his partner in the Orville is because they are someone who have been together for a long time. After that initial spark of love has kind of like gone down, and they are into the ordinary routine of things. Like, they still love each other, but it's the routine thing. Now you have like the daily quarrels, you have the disagreements, especially when a child comes into the picture and they might have like different ideas of child rearing and everything that goes with it, and you see like the stresses of work and everything. It affects their domestic life. And I absolutely love that, for the simple reason that they just showed that a gay couple that has been together for a long time is just like any other married couple. It's the same mechanisms that come into play. It's the same dynamics. They handled it completely straight. And they didn't even tell anyone it was coming. They never went out and signaled, "We have a gay couple here, everyone come and see, gay couple." Like, no, they just did it. They just did it, and they rolled with it, and they did it perfectly.
Not only that, a gay couple with a transsexual child.
Yeah, and they did it like it's the most natural thing in the world. So natural you don't even need to mention it. So perfect handling. Whereas in Discovery, it was promoted up and down, like signaled long time in advance that this is something that we want to do because message, which is fine. But as I said about the execution and the chemistry, I get the impression that they must be relatively new as a couple. And if that is not the case, if they are intended to have been together for a really long time, I did not get that. I did not get like that same real chemistry with a little bit of wear and tear that you saw in the Orville, which executed it so much better.
Yeah. Tom, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think Andre summed a lot of it up best, and we already touched on it a little bit earlier, and like I said, outside of the one scene, which both Andre and I talked about, where there seemed to be a little bit of a power struggle there between, because you kind of had that point where Dr. Culber's like coming in like, I have Michael Burnham here. What do you think about that? This is what's going on. I agree with her, and this is my job. Are you going to do yours? This whole kind of standoffish thing that only means something mainly because they're in a relationship. And like Andre said, it only means something too, though, if it's early on in their relationship. Because if it's later on, then it's a whole different thing. Other than that, it just seemed really kind of forced, like I said. Not overly forced, but it just didn't seem to land. And it's mainly just because all these characters are so flat. Because all this shit, like we've said time and time again, just seems like it happens because story, because it has to. And these characters are acting this way at this moment in time because the story requires it. The only thing that's consistent is that it's batshit crazy. This tardigrade thing is kind of consistently coming through, but how everybody acts, how the story rolls, and what makes sense is never consistent. It's like it follows its own set of rules that it changes at any time it wants to because it has to. And this is another example of that right here. It felt very forced in a sense that it was unnecessary except for outside of the one scene, and that was it.
Yeah, like you said, it has its own set of rules and keeps changing it. It kind of reminds me of when a lot of people say to me, oh, well, these are fictional characters. You could do whatever you want. Only to a point. And it just seems like we have gay couple because reasons. The difference here between Culber and Stamets and Bortus and Clyden is we like Bortus and Clyden. I hate to bring it down to something such simple as that, but you like Bortus. Bortus is an actual character. Clyden is an actual character.
Well, I think Mundane Matt pointed it out best. And when we had him on the other show where we talked about, I think it was the 3rd episode of STD and the 4th episode of Orville, most people can relate to this. You've been in this situation, and like he said, even though you love that person, you could see that hate in that moment between the two of them, and it was a hate of, just I can't stand you right now because we're not seeing eye to eye. And we've seen both sides of these characters in that sense. We've seen them madly in love, and we've seen them not see eye to eye several times throughout the show already in only a few episodes. And we've gotten a lot more character depth, and it had more to do with the story than anything that these characters' couples had to do with this story.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, the Culber and Stamets, it seems like they just threw them together. And the plot decided, oh, they need to be a couple just at the last minute because we need to tie this up. And like I said, you really don't get the sense that they're a couple because you haven't seen it. You're just telling them they're a couple because reasons. Because the plot demands it.
Because that's the only way the writers think that they can make them interesting.
Yeah, exactly. And like I said, Bortus and Clyden, we see them together. We see them being a couple together. And a lot of people will, there's this argument that, Bortus and Clyden aren't a gay couple because they were from a single sex species, single gender species. Well, okay, but there's still a same sex couple. I mean, we're getting the semantics, but still, I mean, you can't get around that. This is a same-sex couple, and it's handling it so much better.
Well, and you could actually look at it. One of them is technically transgender.
Yes, actually, that's a really good point. Clyden was born female, and he underwent the gender reassignment. So we have a same-sex transgendered couple. But anyway, but in the final scene, actually, of Discovery, we got a hint of something to come. In the final scene of Discovery, and when that was Stamets looking in the mirror. And for those who haven't seen it yet, I don't know why you haven't seen it yet if you're listening to this podcast, but he walks away from the mirror, and his reflection remains in the mirror, and it gives an evil grin. I think they're taking this idea of a mirror universe a little too literally. It's not a mirror universe. You look into the mirror. It is a mirror universe in that it's a reflection of everything that is our universe, but it's opposite. It is turned around, such as the Terran Empire substituting for the Federation, evil Spock with the goatee.
Well, so I was gonna say, I'm surprised everybody doesn't have a mustache at this point. It's like it's so blatantly in your face. That was kind of the joke, because like in the mirror episode of TOS and stuff like that. That's what I'm waiting for one of
I'm waiting for one of them to say, "Your agonizer, please." So, if anyone hasn't seen Mirror Mirror, go watch it. It's a classic episode. But Andre, what are your thoughts on this whole thing?
Well, we're just gonna have to see how they handle it, because again, they keep on saying that this is Prime, which it isn't. But it's going to be interesting to see how they're going to handle the mirrored universe. Are then they actually going to go into the Prime universe? Are they going into the Kelvin universe? Is it going to be the Lorca mustache universe? Which crew members are already changed with their mirrored universe counterparts? You know what I think that they might be going for? Something kind of like Battlestar Galactica, where you have like the silent doubles, and maybe they're gonna do something like that here. Like, you see, they already have the aesthetics and everything from Battlestar Galactica down, so I wouldn't be surprised if they try to do some of that here with who can we trust? Who among us is replaced with a mirrored universe counterpart? I don't know that that is the direction that they're going in, but I wouldn't be surprised if it was. Am I excited? Not really.
Something probably might have happened to this Stamets guy while he was in that chamber to open a doorway or gateway into the mirror universe. And I keep saying, the pixie dust, the midichlorians, the magic mushrooms, whatever you want to call it, it is going to be the catalyst that squashes every conceivable timeline together, or this crew gets transported permanently into another timeline. So we're about to end transmission now. Until the next Trek log, I'd like to thank Lieutenant Tom Connors for joining me here on the bridge.
Always a pleasure, Captain.
And once again, I'd like to thank Fleet Admiral Andre, beaming in all the way via subspace from Starfleet headquarters.
My pleasure, gentlemen.
And I am, of course, your Captain, Robb Robot Shlomo, and we will, for this week, end transmission.
If you like this video, then please hit that subscribe button. Due to recent changes by YouTube, we'd also like to ask all of our subscribers to please hit that bell icon. That way you'll be notified when new content is uploaded. If you enjoy our content, then please consider supporting this channel through Patreon. As thanks, patrons will receive early access to mini documentaries, exclusive behind-the-scenes videos, special Lost episodes, and more. Please join us for more spin-free news and analysis of your favorite genre movies, as well as backgrounds and context of your favorite characters, and roundtable discussions here at Midnight's Edge After Dark.